Okay, so Prime Minister Mark Carney has landed in Australia, and it's also somewhere I'm going to be visiting in Q4. I can't wait for that vacation. But the PM isn't there for a vacation. He's there to strengthen ties with our allies. Because, our next door neighbor, they went a little bit crazy. But Prime Minister Carney was just in India, and I believe after this he goes to Japan as well. So he's definitely making stops around the world to strengthen ties with our allies. But in this video, I want to talk about a report out of Australia. And it brings up a few points that I actually want to discuss. Let's jump into it right away.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has touched down in Sydney for a 3-day visit to Australia. Mr Carney will hold business meetings in Sydney before heading to Canberra, where he'll deliver a major speech to the Australian Parliament. The two countries are likely to focus on expanding both strategic and economic ties in a time of enormous strategic disruption. But the escalating crisis in the Middle East is also likely to feature heavily in their talks. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts joined us now. Stephen, so this was originally pitched as a visit focused heavily on trade and strategic ties, but of course events in Iran likely will now dominate these talks.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they'll entirely dominate talks, but there's no doubt that they will feature heavily. Both Australia and Canada are, of course, grappling with the full implications of the chaos that we're seeing in the Middle East right now with the US strikes on Iran. In many ways, there is a lot of common ground. Both countries have got large numbers of their nationals effectively stranded in the Middle East and are trying to work out how they can best get many of those people home. Similarly, neither Canada or Australia are major players, or really players at all in this conflict, but they have both, interestingly, given backing to the Trump administration's decision to strike Iran, notwithstanding big question marks over the legality of that decision.
Now, this is the part I actually wanted to talk about. And some of you may agree or disagree with me, but, everyone has their own opinion on this. But when Prime Minister Mark Carney supported the United States attacking Iran, something inside me didn't sit right with this. On one hand, agreeing with the Orange McNugget is just going to feed his ego. And it's just the thought of supporting the United States on something, it just makes me cringe. On the other hand, you have Iran, who had a supreme leader that reigned terror on the nation for decades. There are many Iranian citizens around the world that are celebrating the death of the supreme leader. And I totally get it. And I can see from that point of view as well. But for me, I think it's the way the whole thing played out. With the orange dictator just deciding to go attack, without any approvals from Congress, and ignoring the rule of law of the United States, which, if you ask me right now, is pretty useless. So I guess the situation is a bit of a double-edged sword. But one thing I do know is that I do hope that Canada does not participate in any of this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree with me, or do you think Canada should participate?
So I'd say, yes, there will be plenty of other things to discuss, but there's no doubt that the ever-evolving and rapidly escalating situation in the Middle East will also very firmly be on the agenda for the two leaders.
And Stephen, what are going to be then the key priorities for Canada beyond discussions on the immediate crisis in the Middle East?
Look, Canada has pitched this trip as part of a broader attempt by Mark Carney to build ties with other middle powers. So it's not just Australia. He's also going to India. He's come from India, and he's going to Japan as well. So this is all part of Mark Carney's attempts to build these new formal and informal coalitions of middle powers in the face of increasingly aggressive and unpredictable behaviour by great powers, including most obviously the Trump administration. In Sydney, we expect him to have a pretty big focus on building investment links. Australia, like Canada, has got some big super funds. They've got a lot of capital sloshing around. Mark Carney has made it very clear he'd like to see super funds from other countries and investment funds across the world invest more heavily in Canada.
Now, if you guys follow my channel, you know I'm not the greatest when it comes to geopolitical trade and things like that. But I am happy that Prime Minister Mark Carney is heading to different regions around the world. I mean, he was already visiting countries in Southeast Asia. He visited China, Europe, Middle East, and now he's in Australia. I have to wonder if the relationship with our dysfunctional neighbor wasn't like it is right now. Would the Canadian government be doing this? I'm going to say no.
Particularly as it tries to build up its own economic resilience. In Canberra, it will be more politically focused, and it will be really interesting to see exactly what Mark Carney has to say when he addresses both the Lowy Institute in Sydney, but also when he addresses federal parliament in what will probably be a fairly high-profile event. We can talk about this a little bit more, but he's been talking a lot about the need to build a new order in the wake of these enormous strategic disruptions. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what he has to say.
Well, he created headlines earlier this year, didn't he, when he declared that rules-based order was over. So we are going to hear more about that during this visit.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see how hard Mark Carney leans into this theme when he speaks to Parliament. Of course, Canada, more so than Australia, has felt the sharp edge of the new approach that the US administration is taking. We've seen...
I think sharp edge is kind of underplaying it, because Canada has been stabbed in the back by one of its closest friends. And not just on a political level, but also the citizen level as well. For me, I definitely learned a lot about the United States over this past year, and especially when I started this channel. But one thing I have noticed in starting this channel is the amount of support that we're getting from our Australian friends. So this is why I do hope that Prime Minister Mark Carney's trip to Australia does have a positive outcome for both countries. And the cherry on top would be if it's a trade deal that really pisses the orange guy off.
Some very, very overt threats from Donald Trump towards Canada. We've seen tariffs whacked on Canada. We've seen, in many ways, that relationship go into a nosedive. In the wake of that, we saw this pretty famous speech from Carney at Davos, where he basically said, the world order is, as we knew it, is over. It was a bit of a fiction in the first place, perhaps, but now it's done. And it's up for countries like Canada to build new formal and informal alliances in order to push ahead with key priorities and to try and stabilise the world in the face of this rupture. Now, of course, Australia agrees with much of this, but it's taken a much less sharply critical approach towards the United States for many very large and obvious reasons. So it'll be interesting to see whether Mark Carney leans into direct criticism of the US while he's here, or speaks a little bit more gently, which gives Australia, of course, a little bit more room for manoeuvre.
Stephen, thank you.
No, I don't think Canadians should be gentle anymore. I mean, that's just my stance. You can agree or disagree with me if you want. But my guess is that Prime Minister Mark Carney is going to have another speech similar to Davos in Australia. Okay, maybe not to that effect, but hopefully it's still firm on what we need to do moving forward. Now, since this video has kind of revolved around Australia, I know we have a lot of Australian viewers, and I appreciate every single one of you. And hell, I'm even going to your country Q4. But I found this video where an Australian gives his opinion on the United States. And I'm curious to see if my Australian viewers agree with it. Now, just FYI, the guy speaking is from the US, but he's reading out his friend from Australia's comments.
I have some friends visiting Australia right now, and they said Australians tend to think of America as a joke because of its current leadership. Well, I wanted to confirm this. I have several Australian friends, so I decided to ask one of them what Australians think about America. He emailed me his answer, and this is part of it. I just wanted to read it to you. This is what Australians think about America. Your friends are telling you we think America is a joke, and on a superficial level, I guess that's true. But anyone who digs a little deeper will find that mirth turning to sadness. To witness a country we've all looked up to for so long, so obviously being led down the path to authoritarianism by a self-serving criminal and his merry band of sycophants and deviants, is heartbreaking. Your system is rotten to the core, mate, and it's hard to see even a slow fix, let alone a quick one. This Epstein business is a perfect example of the extent of the rot. It's riddled right through every layer of power, and only complete disclosure will repair even some of the public's distrust and disdain, and I have my doubts that that will ever happen. That is what Australians think of America, according to Monty. You know what? I think he's right.
So to my Australian viewers, do you agree with your fellow citizen? Let us know in the comments below. Okay, that's it for today's video. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian and international perspective, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button below so you're notified of my future videos. Thanks everyone. I'll see you in the next one.